Have you ever felt stuck, like your past is holding you back from the future you deserve? Today, I'm going to show you how to break free from the limiting beliefs and trauma that are trapping you in a cycle of self-doubt and missed opportunities. Whether it's achieving a healthier body, a stronger mindset, or more financial freedom, this episode of Healthgoat is your guide to overcoming the barriers that are keeping you from your best life. Stay tuned, because this could be the most transformative conversation you'll ever hear. Now, before we move forward, I want to make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to this podcast, because I want to make sure that you know when content is being released. I'm here to help you to improve your overall well-being, your health, and just to make sure that you find a place of freedom from the limitations that are holding you back from optimizing and walking in your highest and your greatest potential. So again, go ahead and subscribe. And that way you will know whenever I am releasing a new video, a new podcast, new material to help you achieve all of your health goals. Now, today we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, because this is a topic that really limits people from their full potential, and it could be limiting you from your full potential. And you may feel like you've overcome some of these limiting beliefs that could be holding you back. But I guarantee you that if you have a trace back to any level of trauma in your life that has not been dealt with, you will see the past show up again in your present. And you may even recognize that you're, quite frankly, living out some of your past moments in your present moment and don't even know it. You may not identify yet, but I want to show you how to break free from that, how to become more aware of how your trauma or how your past has affected where you are now. And many people, whether they know it or not, they are living by limiting beliefs. And this isn't something that is hidden from some people and given to others. This is something that I think we all deal with. I've had to face my limiting beliefs because I know that I grew up in a culture that expressed certain things and an environment where people spoke certain things that have come back to stifle my level of personal development. And the first thing you got to do is really recognize that. And it's quite interesting, because as we grow and as we move forward in life, our ability to recognize this can either become more clear, or it can actually become more gray, meaning that it's harder and harder for us to recognize this. It just depends on where you are, because our brains develop. And as we develop, depending on which route we're going, are we in a place of arrested development, or are we in a place of personal development? And depending on where you are, again, you're going to even process the past a little different. You're going to see it differently. And I'm going to explain how that all works, because this is very, very crucial to where you are now. And if there is any roadblocks in your life, you want to be able to overcome them and identify where they're coming from first. There needs to be self-awareness, in other words. And even if you have not experienced calamity, if you have any level of trauma in your past, it could materialize and manifest in the now. And you want to be able to get ahead of what that could look like for you. You want to be able to get ahead of the fire. Listen, life will throw fires your way. They will. It's not about if, it's about when. And as the Bible says, you should have a foundation that is able to weather whatever storm comes your way. And the problem is we don't have a foundation to weather that storm often. And so we find ourselves in devastation, and we could limit that. And one of the things that I always mention is that it is very hard to try to take out a fire and learn how to take out a fire at the same time. So, in other words, if you've ever been in school or in a job or, a building where you're trying to go through the steps of how to react or respond to an actual fire, you'll see that there's some practice involved. You learn which door to go out of and all of those different things. Same thing when you get on an airplane. They're going to talk to you about, how to escape if there is any problems. Okay. But imagine not being prepared. And now you got to figure out, where are the exit doors? What's happening in the middle of the fire? Well, that's how life is for some people. Like, there's these things that come and we're not prepared for them. And then all of a sudden we're trying to learn how to exit, how to get over the hump, how to, really just triumph over it. And it's hard if we don't know how to triumph over it. We're trying to triumph over it and learn how to do it at the same time as dealing with the actual chaos that's happening in our lives. And again, most of what we are experiencing that is devastating to our lives have to do with limiting beliefs. There's a lot of different seedings that happen that allows for these thoughts to manifest. And one of the ways is through just childhood indoctrination, right? We can really train children to either be confident or to be broken. And so it starts there. Were you trained to be confident? Were you trained to be self-secure, self-loving? Or were you trained to be fearful, have anxiety about things, think the worst of things, become broken, insecure? You may not be able to identify it, but there's a lot of things that may have happened in your past that planted seeds in that direction, like teachers, for example. And that's the second way, is authority figures. If your teacher ever says something negative to you, like you can't never get it right, or maybe your parent may have said, oh, you're going to be just like your daddy, or your daddy said, you're going to be just like your mom. And they said that in a very negative way to point out a negative trait that your parent had that you're going to have. Like, those are seeds that are planted. And we got to be very careful about those seeds, especially with the younger generation, because the words that you speak, they are spirit and they are life. And they create an impact on children, because children they're developed in a way where at a young age, they can be molded into one way or the other. And so we got to make sure that we are seeding words of confidence to our children. And then also social proof, as we see now, is a huge thing for a lot of people, and they are shaping the philosophy of our children. So when you go on social media, whatever is accepted, then sometimes our children think this is accepted, to dress like this, to behave like this, to talk like this, to allow for certain things to happen in your life. The social proof is what almost brings this normality of something that could be very toxic and dysfunctional. And it amazes me how normal things are to people, and I find them to be quite weird and unstable and toxic. And I don't mean to be aggressive with this, but I am telling you that a lot of what's happening on social media is not planting a good foundation in young ones who are not able to think as independently as they should be able to at this moment. And the last thing that really makes people manifest limiting beliefs is internal insecurities. And that just happens all throughout life. Again, it starts in our younger years, where if whatever has been planted in you made you feel insecure, then you're going to really water and develop those insecurities. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that we speak things that will cause security in younger people. Okay. Now, this is not limited to younger people. There are insecurities that happen as we age. For example, if you wind up losing a job, or you get fired from a job, and maybe you were wrongly fired or whatever, or you didn't get the position, or like, for example, Michael Jordan didn't get, accepted to the basketball team. What was it, his sophomore year or something? That could have caused an internal insecurity that made him believe, I'm not enough, I'm not accepted. It could have planted seeds of rejection. Obviously, we know that he overcame this, but every person isn't wired to do that. And that can go in the wrong direction. But what I want you to know and be encouraged about is, I want you to know this. Reality is negotiable. Anything that is happening in your life is negotiable. That is empowering, because many people think that, oh, I'm stuck here. This is just how life is going to be. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about these ideas that are stakeholders in who we are as human beings. And for some people, it restricts them. And that's why you can do all the work in the world. You can feel like, I read all the books, I listened to everything, I understand my limiting beliefs are holding me back. I've tried to conquer over those things, and there's still something that's not right for you or not working. I'm going to talk about that one thing that's not right and make sure that you understand this is also a part of the process, because this is also for people who have done the work, but they still quite see themselves as where they need to be. And again, this could be in any area of your life. Now, we have to talk about trauma, because trauma is one of the major things that are holding people back from where they desire to be. And most people don't understand how trauma works. It needs to be explained so that you can understand how trauma works. And also, there's a lot of people who are living with post-traumatic stress disorders. Okay, so there's a lot of stress that's happening, and people are carrying that stress into their future. And there's no way to really thrive and to be free if you're carrying the stresses or the stressors from yesterday into today. And PTSD also insists of, a lot of things that really are detrimental to your entire life, like painful thoughts and intense emotions and bodily changes and behavioral changes, right? And what we got to understand about trauma is not just in the brain. Trauma is stuck in the body, and it merits us having certain emotions that we have. And if you know anything about me, you'll know that I always constantly say that to the degree of where your emotions are they heightened emotions? Are they powerful emotions or primal emotions? To the degree of where your emotions are, that's the degree of decisions that you're going to make in life. And that's the degree of your experiences and your outcomes, right? And so many people are trapped in a loop of trauma and don't know how to get out. Now, here is the warning. The warning is this: the brain changes, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing for you who want to change, because you're going to have to understand how to change the brain, because when the brain changes, you change. It's not just about trying to fix things in your life. You have to fix you, because you are the person that's making those decisions that you're making that leads to the devastations that you experience in life, right? So the brain changes. Now, let me explain something, because the brain can change in a very, very detrimental way for a lot of people because of trauma. Now, when trauma happens, and trauma could be a plethora of things. There are some extreme traumas that people have experienced, and then there are some less extreme traumas, but nevertheless, it does have an impact on you and your brain. Trauma could be a car accident that you got into when you were younger, or it could be something as small as I had an event happen where I was young, and I was, trying to pet like a black cat in the alley. I don't know why I was doing this. We all know that you don't try to go up to black cats in an alley now. I notice now, but I tried to go pet a cat in the alley, and the cat seemed very nice at first. And then when I got closer and closer and touched the cat scratched me really bad. That was a traumatic experience for me. How do I know? I remember it, I know that this happened, and I often think about it. And there's like certain things in your life that may have happened. That's a less traumatic thing, but nevertheless, it did merit certain ideas that I had about animals like cats and dogs and stuff like that. And so that's something minor, but I mention a minor thing because I want you to know that there's a different level of trauma. Now, another traumatic event that could be on a total opposite side of the spectrum could be a molestation. That's something huge that if a child experiences, it will have a great impact on their mind, their level of trust, their relational dynamics, unless it's dealt with at a deep level, right? And so what happens is when we have an event that happens in our life, the only thing that connects us to that event or that trauma is our memory. Like the event has come and gone, but the only thing that connects us and that impacts us is the memory of it and what it meant to us. Like if I take as a child, like pets don't like me, or if I take from that event, all animals are dangerous. Whatever my meaning is, it's going to show up in life because now I'm going to have a fear of animals, whether it's a little puppy, a little cute puppy, that nobody should be afraid of. And then we wonder why kids are running and screaming from a puppy. And it's like, it's just a puppy. There must have been some kind of trauma there. Or if you get in a relationship and you feel like you have to suppress your emotions and be abused, and, you can't really say anything because when you got molested when you were a child, you had to suppress it. Whoever the person was, could have been a family member that told you, don't tell anybody. And then you had to learn how to suppress your feelings in the midst of pain. And so now when you get older, when you're in pain, you suppress and you stay quiet and you shrink back instead of communicating. Like, all of those things can come out in life. And what they are is they're allowing us to connect to the past, meaning that even though we're in the present, we're still living in the past. And I've talked about this a lot before, so I won't go too deep into it. But if you are living in the past, even if you're in the now, the present, then that means that there's no room for you. There's no energy for you to create your future. And that's why you find yourself stuck or in cycles, because that's what a cycle is it's the rehearsing of past events. And so at some point, you have to make that event mean something different than what it means. And that means that you have to take responsibility of that. And that is a hard pill to swallow, because it's hard for someone to take responsibility for something that legitimately happened bad in their life. And a lot of people just are, quite frankly, not able to do it. But what's going to happen is that if you don't take responsibility for what that event meant to you, and that requires some different outlets of what to do. There's therapy involved and all of that. I think the strongest thing that you can do is to heighten your level of emotions, and whatever emotion that's attached to that traumatic event, you have to overcome that emotion. So if it's super devastating for you and you have emotions of resentment and hate and anger and bitterness, you have to overcome that, because what those emotions do is they prevent you from making the decisions that you need to make for your future. And it keeps you in the place of where you're utilizing your amygdala a whole lot. And the amygdala part of your brain is what scans for threats and connects memories to emotions. And then what happens is, when you are in that cycle, you become less tolerant to stress that's happening. So anything else that's happening in your today world that is a bit stressful, it impacts that and it adds stress to that. And let's say it has to do with your kids or your relationship with your kids. Yes, that could be a stressful thing, but now you don't even have the ability to have energy to have a healthy relationship with your children, because you are so stressed out, because you're carrying the stress from the past, or you might be carrying levels of PTSD, and that comes from connecting those emotions to experiences that you've had in the past, and creating again that meaning of what it meant for you. Like, if you were abandoned, does that mean for you that you were not worthy enough for the love that your parent had for you? Like, what kind of meaning do you take from that? And then if you take that type of meaning from it, then you'll have some level of resentment towards the person who has created that feeling and that emotion inside of you. And so it's draining. It does take away energy, and it takes away energy from the present. And you need energy from the present in order to influence the future. And so you have to break free from this. And then here's another thing that winds up happening. If you are stuck in this place where you are scanning and you for threats, you're in fight or flight mode, then it is hard for the brain to distinguish the past from the present. And so the brain doesn't know where you really are. And if the brain doesn't know where you are, then you don't know where you are. And that's where this breeding of confusion happens in life, where it's like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel so lost. I feel so stuck, because you don't have an awareness of where you really are. Like, you potentially could be in this year, but your body and your mind and your brain on an arrested development level is stuck in yesterday. And that doesn't resonate with your neurological system. And so so then it creates a place of insecurity, and now you're breeding insecurity and you're confused, and in confusion, you can't really have clarity again to make the right decisions that you want to make. And so then because you're still stuck in the past, you're making decisions based off that past, and then you're making the wrong decisions and you're perpetuating the cycle. And then you feel like, well, the cycle is reinforcing how you really feel. And you're like, I told you, I can never get ahead. I can never get unstuck. I can never, break free. And it's a perpetuating thing. And life is manifesting and materializing and reflecting back where you mentally are, because that's just how life works, is that it's not about, you responding to life. It's life responding to you and your inner ecosystem of what's going on. And so, again, that reinforces things. And then you're like, aha, I told you so. And then you don't feel empowered to break free because you think this is just a part of your fate. This is a part of your life. This is where you should be, and nothing can break that cycle. But I'm here to tell you, you can break the cycle. And it starts with being very initiative towards this entire thing. And that's why I want to talk through this, because you have to be the initiator of what's going on. And then I also want to add this, is that when you're rehearsing the past and situations that may have occurred in your life, you're doing it from a brain that's changing, right? And so I want to tell you a story about someone where this happened to them, and they actually lied on me and sent the sheriff to get me and tried to take me to court for criminal activity that never, ever happened. Because again, when someone's living in PTSD and trauma and they don't know how to break this cycle, the brain is changing. And so even the stories from yesterday start to change, because you're viewing it from a brain that is becoming more and more dark and distorted. You're viewing it from a brain that is full of fatigue and overreactive, dysregulated nerves and a dysregulated nervous system that leads to stress, strain, and even a lot of times chronic disease, because your body is impacted by all of this that's happening. And so things really start to get more and more dysfunctional. And now even when you are recalling the memory that's connecting you to those past experiences, the memory and the story starts to change a bit, right? And then if you are again in the now and you are reliving this past trauma, then not only is the distortion coming from the past, but the distortion is also being placed in the present. And that's how people wind up in a place of mental confusion. Or have you ever known a person who was saying things were happening that weren't happening? Like, they're after me, they're here to kill me, or like, just something that's like, wait, calm down. Nobody's here. Nobody's after you. Everything's okay, because they're seeing things and they're experiencing things in the present that's not happening, but it's all connected to the past. And so not only again is the past affected and the memory of it, but that's going to translate into today. So here's what happened to me. It was out of nowhere. I'll just be honest. I'll be 100% honest. It was out of nowhere. And I was so shocked. It was during when we had the shutdown. I was at home because of course a lot of us were still at home. And all of a sudden, there was a sheriff that came to our church that me and my husband pastor at, and they came looking for me. And so here's the sheriff. Now I'm at home. And so the sheriff comes looking, knocking on the door saying, hey, it's Kamilah Stevenson here. And of course they're like, no, she's not here. She's at home. And so then they called me and they said the sheriff came looking for you and said that you needed to report yourself to like the closest courthouse. And so I was like, okay, why would a, sheriff be looking for me? Like, what have I done? And so I went because I was curious. I'm like, now what's this all about? And so I went to the courthouse, and they said that some woman had reported that, and I'm going to be honest, like I'm not making this up, and it's going to sound really weird, but they said a woman had reported that I had been stalking her, and that I preached a women's conference, which I never preached a women's conference during that time because we were on shutdown. So I wasn't even at the church much during that season. She said I preached a women's conference on the weekend. And then after the conference, I got in my car, I followed her to the bus stop, and I threw eggs at her. I said those must have been organic eggs, right? Because I only have organic eggs in my house or in my possession. So, I was just making light of it, right? And so not only that, but they said also that I followed them to work. I was tapping into their TV system and tapping into their computer and their phone. Like I was hacking them and stuff. And whoever this was really believed that I was doing this to them. And of course, the police officer and the sheriff said it sounded really weird. It just didn't make any sense. And I told the sheriff, anybody who knows me knows that I would never do something like that to anybody. And so just pay attention to this. I kind of understood what could be happening. Obviously, there was some kind of mental dysregulation that was going on because it was a story. It wasn't the truth. It was a lie. But whatever this lie was, she was believing. And maybe this lie was connected to some kind of trauma or some kind of experience that she had in her past. Now, I'm a leader at the church, so I wouldn't be shocked if she had some kind of trauma that was connected to a leader. Now, it could be her parents. It could have been when she was younger. It could have been, on her job. And if it was later in life, that abuse or whatever that could have perpetuated could have still been connected to something in her past. And that cycle keeps manifesting over and over again because you're materializing it, because you are putting your focus and your energy on it, because your amygdala is scanning for it and you're in fight or flight. So you're reliving it over and over. And so it causes life to reflect back exactly what you're putting your attention on. And because the brain is changing during this entire process, then it's manifesting itself in her present. And maybe that story was there because she created it in her own brain, even though it wasn't true. So even in a situation like that, if you were to sit her down and ask her what happened in your past or in your childhood that may have been traumatic, she may tell you what happened, but it may be a lie also. Like this, happened to me when I was younger, or maybe whatever happened, it has been just distorted completely. And so now there's no real even record of the truth of what's happening. And it's harder and harder to deal with at that point. That's why it's harder when you keep going astray like this. This is why you got to get a hold of this now, because now you'll wind up living in a delusional world. And a lot of people are living in delusion, and they can't recognize it because they're inside of themselves, like you can't read the label from inside the jar. And so a lot of times I say that when people start losing their minds or having some kind of, unstable emotional or mental episode, they're usually the last to know. Other people know, like, hey, we might need to get you some help, or, and they may think they're perfectly fine. And that's why this is a warning sign. Because what I'm telling you is that you're going to be the last to know that something's wrong if you don't fix this and if you don't get some of this trauma dealt with. And then even trying to pinpoint and revert back to the past, all of that is even going to be distorted. And we're not going to be able to find the truth because the truth is becoming further and further away from your brain and your memory. And so, and most people are not, if you don't have the same brain today, you're not going to recognize what happened when you were 8 years old. If your brain is different today than when you were 8, it's going to be a different story. Now, imagine if your brain was better and you were able to think with more clarity and you were able to understand things differently because of personal development and because of flourishing and growth. Then now you're going to be able to take those past experiences and things that's happened, and you're going to be able to filter them with more maturity. Like you're going to start thinking, maybe my parents, maybe they were abused and they experienced some things from their parents. And you'll just start to understand things a little differently. And it doesn't excuse things that's happened, but you'll have a full concept of how to analyze things differently so that you can take your negative emotions out of them and take back control of them and heighten them so that you can live a better tomorrow. One of the things that I also want to say about this topic is that when your brain is constantly in fight or flight and you are constantly living in trauma, then you also cannot operate in a higher ordered thinking capacity. because the amygdala is what is overutilized often when you are in this traumatic way of living. And the prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that is the executive decision maker. And that part of your brain is almost like if you don't use it, you lose it. And so if you're not using that part of your brain, especially because you're stuck in these traumatic experiences from the past, then you definitely are not making high order executive decisions that will cause for you to have a healthier, more successful tomorrow. You won't be, because you're not using that part of you. And that part of you actually gets turned down when you're in fight or flight mode. And so this entire trap is what is keeping you from being able to really flourish and to step out. And no matter what you're doing, that's probably why it's not working, is because you have to go back and deal with the issues of your past. And some people want to suppress them and overlook them. And I'm not telling you that you got to go back and relive the negative emotions of those traumatic experiences. But what you do have to learn how to do is overcome those negative emotions. Okay? Now, one of the things that I want to share that could be prohibiting you also from moving forward and from having better relationships, overcoming anxiety or depression or a chronic disease, or, establishing better momentum maybe in your business. Again, this can be utilized in every aspect of your life. And some people have done a lot of work, but they still feel like, hey, I'm still not where I need to be. And I think that the reason why that could be is because of this one thing that may be holding you back. And that is what we call your core programming. And this is important to understand, because your core programming could be causing resistance towards your healing and your transformational process. And your core programming is not all bad. It's actually a part of some of your strengths, but some of those strengths on the other side, on the darker side, can be very detrimental to you. And I understand that there are a lot of people who have made some great strides. Like they have faith and they've overcome some of their belief systems and everything, but it's still something that's holding them back. And that's that resistance. Because here's what I want to say. And I'm going to read this scripture so you can understand what I mean. But it is in Matthew 21:21. And Jesus replied and says, "Truly, I tell you, if you have faith and," this means you can have both at the same time. If you have faith and do not doubt. Not only can you do what was done to the fig tree, but also you can say to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and it will be done. Now, the fig tree, he cursed because it wasn't producing. So if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you get rid of the things in your life that are no longer productive, or the people in your life that is no longer conducive to your tomorrow and where you're going, or maybe it's holding you back. Now, not only do you find the courage and the strength and the wisdom to get rid of those things, but you can also move mountains that are in your way. And see, some of these things are mountains that are in our way. And that's why we can't get over. Like, we made some strides, we got some faith, but we haven't gotten rid of the doubt, right? And so this is what I mean by resistance, is your core programming is where you cultivate yourself to have doubt and to have worry. And so that means that sometimes you can be doing good or be in the right direction and have faith and all of that, but it's the resistance that is stopping the progression. So the doubt is the resistance. So you have the desire, you have the faith, you have all of those in place, but there's still resistance. And that resistance causes there to be a materialization that you don't want in your life and in your future. And so you have to deal with the core programming that you have. And that core programming is connected to the trauma from your past often. Okay. And so that core programming is the part of you that says, I'm not good enough, or, every time I move one step forward, I got to take 3 steps back, or I'll never get over this. I'll never be able to pay for this house. I'll never be able to get the dream job that I want, or the dream relationship that I want. It's that part of you that starts to doubt even if you are moving forward, and then it creates this resistance where you just can never really make it through, that you can never really break through the glass ceiling because of the resistance. So I want you to know it's not always a lack of faith or a lack of desire or a lack of vision. It's the fact that when you put the vision out there, when you activate your faith, you are still up against the resistance that is in your programming. And so this is why I talk about the trauma a lot, because the trauma is often what's built in the programming, right? And so you got to be able to deal with that, because it will open up a new world for you. And as I always state, the world really is a reflection of your inner being. And most people don't understand that, because they think that they are like responding to life. They're not responding to life. They're initiating life when they think that they're responding to life. And I use this example all the time. When you look in the mirror is not going to smile at you first. You got to smile, and then the mirror smiles back at you. Meaning that there's some things that we have to initiate first in order to get life to respond, and we don't understand that. See, you give, and then it will be given back to you. You receive when you give. You don't just decide that you're only going to give when you receive. That's the wrong way of living, and that's the way a lot of people are living. And so we have this trauma-based learning environment where the only time we make changes is if something big happens that's just super devastating, and now we wake up, right? And what I want you to do is to be alarmed and to wake up before things materialize. Now, some things may have already materialized in your life, and now you're starting to understand why. But if they have not, and you know that there is unresolved issues from the past, understand that they are showing up in your now, and they will show up in your future if you don't get a grips on it, and if you don't begin to overcome those emotional connections to those things that have taken place in your life. So a lot of times we like to run from things. We cannot run any longer. We have to face them. And it may not be easy, but life is not easy, right? This is a part of life, and we have to live by the principles that will give us the outcomes of success. And so I want to share this one thing with you also, because I think this is the key to being able to get a grip on this and really being able to change the course and the direction of what tomorrow looks like for you, of what your health looks like. If you're trying to overcome some kind of health ailment or autoimmune disease or gut issues or chronic disease or high blood pressure or whatever those things are, the reason why maybe some of this is not as resolved as it needs to be is not because you're missing out on the strategies. It's because of this one thing. You don't understand first principles. And first principles are the order in which life should be administered in order to produce the greatest outcomes that you desire. And we see this framework in the Bible when God tells man to be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth and have dominion, right? And there's a framework with that, is that you have to be fruitful first. You have to become, then you shall do, then you shall have. Be fruitful, do multiply, have dominion. People are trying to have things by doing things and not becoming the person that it takes to be able to have and manage those things, because you may do a few things, see a little reward here and there, but what is going to happen is if you have not become the person that you're supposed to become for your future, you will self-sabotage back to the restraints and the confinements of who you really are. And that is the truth, right? And so you have to expand your identity with some of this. But first principles need to be considered when dealing with any desire that you want in life. And I'm sure the desires are amazing. You may have your dream home, your dream job, your dream business, your dream relationship, your dream life, right? Your dream vacations and all the traveling and everything that you want to do in life. You have to understand first principles, because it's not just about strategies. You see, certain people can have the same strategies, but what they don't understand is that there is an invisible force that is the culprit of those strategies. They are the genesis of those strategies, and that is mindset. And so the strategies that someone may come up with in life to be successful usually comes from the invisible force of their thought life and them having the ability to manifest and to take action based off of their capacity and their quality of thinking. And then it produces the strategies that lead to the outcomes that they have. And if somebody else just look at them and say, I want to take the strategies, well, you're still not going to produce the same outcomes, because these strategies were derived from a particular mindset. And so there's things behind the scenes that have to be addressed. And most times when people are not able to even come up with the solutions that they need to fix things that are going wrong in their life, it's because they have what you call bound energy. And so they don't have the capacity to have the energy that's required to think on a different level to get them into the solutions that they need to have, right? And so bound energy often is trapped when first principles are not administered, okay? And so it's just like, again, we've mentioned this, when it's you give and then it shall be given to you at the measure in which you give, right? And so some people won't understand that, and they're waiting on something to happen before they can give. They're waiting on more money to be able to give. They're waiting on more time to be able to spend with their kids, when they don't understand first principles, which is you have bound energy somewhere in the relationship between you and your children. And you're waiting on, this job is taking up all my time and I gotta work and try to figure out how to create more time for my children, when the first priority is you spend time with your children, and then you will unbound the bound energy that has been locked up and constrained somewhere, and you are not segmented. See, people think they're waiting on something to do something because they think they're segmented. No, you're not segmented. You are a whole person. You have to think from a holistic viewpoint. If you have bound energy somewhere, then you have a lack of energy in the places that you should be available. And once you unbound that bound energy, you will have the availability, and your mind, your body will come into alignment, and then energy is now free to be utilized and to go where it should go. But it's not doing that if you don't follow first principles. And so this is exactly why I think it's a saying where, I don't know if it was Gandhi who said, man, I have so much to do today that I need to meditate 2 hours instead of 1 hour. Now, some people would say, well, if you got so much to do today, you need to restrict your meditation to 1 hour. But no, he understands first principles, that if I give myself into this area where there would be bound energy, if I don't, then I free up my energy, and then it'll go and flow where it needs to go and flow. Okay. And so that is why I work out every morning for the most part, or take a walk or something. That's why I work out. And it's, some people say, I don't have time to work out. You don't understand bound energy. That's why you're tired. So we have to live a little differently. And once you realize, that I may feel like I don't have enough time to work out because I'm doing and I'm hustling and I'm doing all this other stuff. But you're saying that actually, if I do work out, I'll gain the energy, and the energy will be directed to the rest of my day. And then I could be more productive and have better brain functionality and all that. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. You're saying that, like, first, before, I'm overworking, I'm working, I'm doing all of this stuff, and I'm trying to, do that first, and then trying to make enough money and, free myself to then spend time with my kids. And you saying, no, spend time with your kids first and unbound the energy. And then you'll see that, that energy will start to flow in ways that you don't quite comprehend. Yeah, I'm saying that. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but I understand first principles. It happens. I have more energy and I have more time when I work out. And you may think like I don't have time to do it because I have all of this other stuff. And I'm saying you don't have time to not do it, because there's certain things that if you do, you will find yourself having the freedom because you are holistic. You're not segmented. It's not, oh, this energy here, this energy there. You have an inner ecosystem of energy that has to be aligned. And if first things aren't first, second ain't going to be second, third is not going to be third. And you're going to find yourself on a bunny trail in life. And that's what most people do. And so in order to tap into higher levels of energy, first things have to be first. And your life, it feels like you're just responding. And I'm trying to tell you, take the initiative, because the quality of life that you have will depend on the energy in your inner man. And life is all about energy. You cannot outwork timing, and you're not going to out hustle wisdom. So get in alignment with wisdom and the principles that successful people have lived by all of their life, even if it doesn't make sense to you. And I'm telling you that energy will translate into the thoughts that you need that will give you the ideas, the creativity, the momentum, and the wisdom to make better decisions and to get greater outcomes in life. I hope that this helped to encourage you to take away all of the resistance that you are pushing in the midst of all that it is that you want to do in life, and that you will hopefully do the work that it takes to get the life that you absolutely desire. Now, make sure that if this blessed you in any way, that you please subscribe to this podcast, and make sure that you share it with someone. I'm sure you know plenty of people who have faced different traumas in their life, or who could just really benefit from hearing this podcast and taking the material and really utilizing it so that they can have a better quality of life, a better well-being. So make sure that you do a kind gesture and you send this podcast to someone who that could really benefit from the material that's been discussed. And also make sure that you put in the comments, what is your resistance? What is the one thing that you are going to start to work on to make sure that you are moving in the right direction and that you're not living in a life of cycles? Please do share. We can all benefit from it. This has been another episode of Healthgoat. I've enjoyed this time with you, and I can't wait to be with you next time.